Ambassador Park Min-jun stood in the center of the Great Council chamber and looked at the faces around him. Some looked angry, some looked ashamed. Most looked away from his eyes. He had worked in this chamber for 20 years. He knew every counselor by name. He had shared meals with them, laughed with them, and solved problems with them. Today, they would vote to remove humanity from the galaxy. The chamber was huge and round. It held representatives from 83 species. Humans had been part of this council for 300 years. In that time, human diplomats had stopped 47 wars before they started. They had written over 200 peace treaties. They had built trade networks that kept hundreds of worlds fed and safe. Now 3 powerful species wanted all of that to end. Counselor Thrax of the Vrexian Empire spoke first. His voice was deep and cold. Humanity has too much power in this council. They insert themselves into every dispute. They claim to help, but really they control us. Smaller species follow human advice without question. This is not right. This is manipulation. Counselor Vextar of the Korthan sovereignty spoke next. His scales glowed red with anger. Humans are too emotional. They make decisions based on feelings, not logic. They cry when they see suffering. They get angry at injustice. These emotions cloud their judgment. They are not fit to guide galactic policy. Counselor Zeph of the Zelthic Confederacy finished the accusation. Her voice was sharp like broken glass. We do not need humanity to maintain peace. We are advanced civilizations. We can solve our own problems. Humanity treats us like children who need guidance. It is insulting. They must leave council space. Park Min-jun listened without interrupting. He had learned this from his human teachers. Listen first. Understand the anger. Find the fear beneath it. He understood what was really happening. These 3 species were jealous. They saw how smaller species trusted human mediators. They wanted that influence for themselves, but they did not understand what they were about to destroy. When it was his turn to speak, Park Min-jun's voice was calm and clear. I will not argue against your feelings. You are angry. You feel humanity has too much influence. These feelings are real, and I respect them, but I must show you what you are about to lose. He activated the chamber's display screen. Images filled the air above them. 300 years ago, the Korthan and Zelthic were at war. Millions died. Human mediator Choi Soon-ja spent 5 years learning both your languages and cultures. She found common ground. She wrote the Treaty of Shared Stars. That treaty has kept peace between you for 280 years. More images appeared. The Vrexian Empire and the Talox Collective were destroying each other's trade ships. Human diplomat Jung Hae-won created the neutral shipping lanes that both sides now use. Your economies depend on these lanes. Park Min-jun looked at each counselor. 47 times, human diplomats have stopped conflicts before they became wars. We did not do this with weapons or threats. We did it by listening. We learned your languages, all of them. We studied your cultures, your histories, your values. We found the places where your needs overlapped. We built bridges. He paused and his voice became serious. You call us emotional. You are correct. We feel deeply. When we see suffering, we want to stop it. When we see conflict, we want to find peace. This is not weakness. This is why we can do what you cannot. We understand that logic alone does not make peace. Peace requires understanding hearts, not just minds. The chamber was quiet now. Some counselors looked uncomfortable, but Thrax stood firm. We vote now, all in favor of removing humanity from council space? 43 hands rose. The species who voted yes were mostly the large, powerful ones. They thought they did not need human help. 12 hands stayed down. These were smaller species who knew they would suffer most without human protection. Park Min-jun nodded slowly. He was not surprised. He was sad, but not surprised. We will leave peacefully. We will evacuate all human colonies within 60 days as you demand. But I must warn you, we have spent 300 years learning to understand all of you. We built bridges between species who could not speak to each other. We created networks of trust that took generations to build. When those bridges fall, when that trust breaks, you will remember why you needed them. He looked directly at Thrax. You think you can replace us? You cannot. Not because you lack intelligence, but because you do not have 300 years to learn what we learned. You do not have the patience to listen when listening is hard. You do not have the empathy to feel another species' pain as your own. These things cannot be taught quickly. You will learn this truth, but you will learn it through suffering. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some called his words arrogant. Others called them threats. Park Min-jun simply bowed and walked out. He had said what needed to be said. They would not listen now. They would listen later, when the cost became clear. Over the next 60 days, humanity evacuated. Human colonies packed their belongings and left worlds they had lived on for generations. Human diplomats said goodbye to alien friends they had worked with for decades. Many aliens who had voted against the expulsion came to say goodbye. Some cried. Humans cried with them. On the last day, the final human ship prepared to leave council space. Park Min-jun stood on the bridge and looked at the view screen. Behind them was the galaxy they had helped build. Ahead was empty space and an uncertain future. His sister, Park Soo-min, stood beside him. She was the director of Human Diplomatic Services. Her face was hard with controlled anger. They will regret this, she said quietly. Yes, Park Min-jun agreed, but we cannot force them to learn. We can only wait. As their ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, the communication channels behind them already carried troubling news. A trade dispute had erupted between two species that humans used to mediate. Both sides claimed ancient rights to the same shipping route. Without human mediators to find compromise, both sides were threatening sanctions. In council chambers, voices rose in anger instead of cooperation. The bridges were beginning to crack. 3 months had passed since the last human ship left council space. Councillor Thrax sat in his private chamber and reviewed reports with satisfaction. The galaxy was finally free from human interference. The council was making decisions without human emotional manipulation. Everything was returning to proper order, or so he thought. The door chimed. His assistant entered with an urgent message tablet. Counselor, the emergency session begins in 10 minutes. The situation between Korthan and Zelthic has escalated. Thrax waved his hand dismissively. A minor trade dispute. We will resolve it quickly. We do not need human hand-holding. His assistant's face showed doubt, but said nothing. They walked together to the great council chamber. When Thrax entered, he immediately felt that something was wrong. The usual calm atmosphere was gone. Councilors stood in angry groups shouting at each other. This was not normal. The session began badly. Councillor Vextar of the Korthan sovereignty spoke first, his scales bright red with rage. The Zelthic Confederacy has closed the Kepler shipping route. This route has been open for 200 years. They have no right to close it. This is an act of aggression. Councillor Zeph of the Zelthic Confederacy responded immediately. The route passes through our ancestral territory. We never agreed to share it. Humans wrote that into the old treaty without our full consent. Now that humans are gone, we reclaim what is ours. That treaty kept peace between our people for centuries, Vexatar shouted. You accepted it then. You benefited from it. Now you break it? We accepted it because humans pressured us, Zeph replied coldly. They made us feel guilty for defending our rights. Without their emotional manipulation, we see the truth. That route belongs to us. Thrax tried to moderate. He proposed a simple compromise. The route would be shared 3 days per week by each species, with 1 day for neutral traffic. It seemed logical and fair. but Vextar rejected it immediately. 3 days is not enough. Our trade requires 5 days minimum. Zeph also rejected it. We do not share what is ours. The route is closed to Corthan ships. This is final. Thrax felt frustration rising. This should be simple. 2 rational species should find a logical compromise. But neither side would move. They kept arguing about ancient claims and historical grievances. The discussion went in circles for hours. Finally, Thrax called for a vote on his proposal. It failed. Neither side would compromise even slightly. The session moved to the next crisis. A border conflict between the Talox Collective and the Dren Union had reignited. For 50 years, human peacekeepers had maintained stations along their shared border. The peacekeepers monitored both sides and prevented small incidents from becoming big problems. When humans left, they offered to train replacement peacekeepers from other species. The Council had rejected this offer as unnecessary. Now, without peacekeepers, a small mining dispute had exploded into violence. 3 Talox miners had crossed into what Dren claimed was their territory. Dren soldiers killed all 3 miners. Talox military forces responded by attacking the Dren border outpost. 12 more deaths followed. Both species demanded Council intervention, but both rejected any solution the Council proposed. Councillor Yoon Seora, who represented a smaller species allied with the Rexian Empire, watched with growing concern. She had supported expelling humanity because she believed Thrax's arguments. Humans had too much influence. The Council needed to be independent. But now she was seeing something unexpected. Without humans, the Council could not function. The problems kept coming. The neutral zone markets, which humans had organized and managed, were collapsing. These markets allowed smaller species to trade without being controlled by large empires. Human administrators had enforced fair rules and prevented cheating. Now, with humans gone, powerful species were manipulating prices and forcing smaller species into bad deals. 7 smaller species filed complaints, but the Council could not agree on how to help them. A representative from the Pelxian Accord spoke with desperation in his voice. For 100 years, humans protected our trading rights. They made sure large empires could not force us into slavery through debt. Now, the Vrexian Empire demands we accept their prices or lose market access completely. We have no choice but to accept. Where is the justice? Thrax responded with cold logic. Business is business. If you want better prices, become stronger. The Council cannot protect you from economic reality. But Yoon Seora remembered something. She remembered a conversation with human diplomat Kim Da-eun 5 years ago. Kim had explained why humans protected smaller species in trade. When strong species crush weak ones, everyone loses. Weak species become desperate. Desperate people start wars. Wars cost more than fair trade ever would. Protecting the weak is not kindness. It is wisdom. Seora had thought those words were just human emotional thinking. Now she understood they were truth. The smaller species were already forming secret alliances. They were buying weapons. They were preparing to fight rather than be crushed economically. The Council was creating the exact problems humans had prevented. The session continued for 8 hours. In that time, the Council addressed 12 different crises. They solved none of them. Every proposal failed. Every compromise was rejected. Councilors shouted at each other like children. Thrax tried to maintain order, but he had no skill for it. He could state facts and logic, but he could not make people listen. He could not make them care about each other's needs. At the end of the session, news arrived that made everything worse. The Corthan sovereignty had mobilized its military fleet. They were moving toward the disputed shipping route. Zelthic forces were also mobilizing to defend it. A war that had been prevented for 280 years was now days away from starting. Thrax returned to his chamber in silence. His assistant followed. Counselor, should we contact humanity? Ask them to help mediate? No, Thrax said firmly. That would be admitting we were wrong. We will solve this ourselves. But deep inside, Thrax felt something he rarely experienced: doubt. He pulled up old records of human mediations. He watched videos of human diplomats at work. He saw how they listened for hours without speaking, how they asked questions that made both sides think differently, how they found tiny pieces of common ground and built on them patiently, how they made enemies into partners through careful, emotional, human understanding. Thrax turned off the videos. He tried to copy those techniques in his mind. He practiced patient listening and thoughtful questions. But he knew it was useless. He did not have 300 years of practice. He did not have the human gift for feeling what others felt. He had logic and intelligence, but those were not enough. Outside his window, he could see ships preparing for war. The galaxy was unraveling. The bridges were falling. And somewhere beyond council space, humanity watched and waited while the species who expelled them finally learned the price of their pride. 6 months after humanity's expulsion, the galaxy burned. Not with literal fire, though some worlds did burn. It burned with conflict, anger, and the complete breakdown of order that humans had maintained for 3 centuries. The Korthan-Zelthic border war had begun exactly as predicted. What started as a dispute over a shipping route had exploded into full military conflict. Both sides claimed they were defending ancient rights. Both sides believed they were justified. Neither side could find any path to peace because neither understood how to see the conflict from the other's perspective. That was something only humans had taught them how to do. The war pulled in allied species on both sides. The Vrexian Empire supported Korthan. The Pelxian Accord sided with Zelthic, hoping for protection against Vrexian economic pressure. What had been a 2-species dispute was now a conflict involving 17 different civilizations. 12 active war zones existed across council space. Trade was down 67% from pre-expulsion levels. 40 million refugees fled their homes, looking for safety that no longer existed. Councillor Vextar called an emergency session of the council. What remained of the council? 32 species had stopped sending representatives. Some were too busy fighting wars. Others had lost faith that the council could solve anything. The chamber that once held 83 voices now echoed with empty seats. Vextar spoke with none of his earlier confidence. We must face reality. The galaxy is collapsing. We need help. I propose we contact humanity and request their return as mediators. The chamber erupted in argument. Councillor Thrax stood immediately. No, we cannot admit we were wrong. We voted to expel them. We said we did not need them. Asking them back now would be humiliation. Councillor Yun Seora stood as well. She had been thinking about this moment for weeks. Humiliation? Look around this chamber, see the empty seats, count the wars, measure the suffering. We are already humiliated. The only question is whether we are too proud to save lives. Humans were the problem, Thrax insisted. They had too much influence. Bringing them back would make things worse. Yun Seora felt anger rise in her chest. You still do not understand. Humans were never the problem. We were the problem. We were jealous of their influence. We could not accept that we needed them. So we destroyed the very thing that kept us safe. She activated the chamber's display screen. Images appeared. Statistics. Data. Truth. Before human expulsion, this council maintained peace between 83 species for 300 years. In 6 months without humans, we have 12 active wars. Before expulsion, galactic trade was stable and growing. Now it is collapsing. Before expulsion, 47 conflicts were stopped before they became wars. In the last 6 months, every single conflict became war because no one could mediate them. More images appeared. These were harder to watch. Refugee camps overflowing with displaced families. Destroyed cities. Burned farms. Children crying. This is the cost of our pride. Every death, every destroyed home, every crying child exists because we were too arrogant to admit we needed help. An older counselor from a minor species spoke quietly. I must confess something. My government secretly contacted humanity 2 months ago. We asked for help with a border dispute. Humans replied that they respect the council's decision and cannot interfere. They would not help us, even when we begged. Several other counselors stood to make similar confessions. 23 species had secretly contacted humanity. All received the same polite refusal. Humans would not return unless the council officially requested it. They would not force their help on people who had rejected them. The session continued with species blaming each other. Some blamed Thrax and the Vrexian Empire for pushing the expulsion. Others blamed Vextar and the Korthan sovereignty. Some blamed Zeph and the Zelthic Confederacy. Everyone blamed someone else. No one wanted to accept their own responsibility. During a break, Yun Siora accessed old records from the human diplomatic archives. These archives were still available because humans had left them as a gift to the council. She wanted to understand what made humans different, what gave them the ability to unite species that now could not stop fighting. She found a training video recorded by human diplomat Choi Da-hyun 20 years ago. In the video, Choi taught a class of young diplomats from various species. He was explaining the foundation of human diplomatic success. Peace does not come from finding the logical answer. Logic tells you what should work. But people do not live by logic alone. They live by emotion, by history, by pride, by fear. If you want to make peace, you must understand these things. A student in the video asked, "But how do we understand emotions of species completely different from us?" Choi smiled. You listen, you watch, you ask questions, you try to feel what they feel. You imagine yourself in their position. This is called empathy. It is hard work. It takes time. But it is the only way to build real peace. Logic can end a war, but only empathy can prevent the next one. Another student asked, "What if the logical answer is the correct one? Should we ignore logic for emotions?" No, Choi explained patiently. You need both. Logic shows you what could work. Empathy shows you what people can accept. The best solutions use both logic and emotion together. That is what makes them lasting. Siora watched more videos. She saw humans mediating disputes that seemed impossible. She saw them listening for hours while angry species shouted accusations. She saw them asking careful questions that made people think differently. She saw them finding tiny areas of agreement and building on them slowly. She saw them celebrating small progress and using it to create bigger progress. She finally understood. Humans were not manipulative. They were not controlling. They genuinely cared about peace. Their emotional nature was not a weakness. It was their greatest strength. They could feel another species' pain as real as their own. They could understand fears that logic alone could never address. They could build trust because they offered trust first. The trait the council had called excessive emotion was actually humanity's gift to the galaxy. And the council had thrown that gift away because they were too proud to accept it. When the session resumed, Sayora spoke with new certainty. I was wrong. I voted to expel humanity. I believed they had too much influence. I was jealous and proud and foolish. I admit this publicly. And I formally request that we vote to invite humanity back, not as council members who can be expelled again, but as independent mediators who can help us rebuild what we destroyed. Silence filled the chamber. Then, slowly, other counselors stood to make similar confessions. Even Thrax, though it clearly hurt him to do so. The vote was called. This time, 49 hands rose in favor. Only 3 voted against. But there was still one problem. They had voted to ask humanity back. Now they had to wait and see if humanity would say yes. 9 months had passed since humanity left Council space, and Counselor Yoon Seora had learned what true collapse looked like. The galaxy was not just at war, it was dying. The careful systems humans had built over 3 centuries were unraveling faster than anyone had imagined possible. The Council had fractured completely. 4 major factions now fought for dominance. The Vrexian Empire led one faction, trying to impose order through military force. The Korthan sovereignty led another, claiming they were defending traditional rights. The Zelthic Confederacy formed a third faction of species who wanted independence from both. The remaining species formed a desperate fourth faction, trying to survive while giants battled above them. Seora's homeworld of Valxes was caught between the Vrexian Empire and the Korthan forces. Both sides claimed Valxes as strategically important. Both demanded allegiance. When Valxes tried to remain neutral, both sides declared them enemies. The attack came without warning. Korthan forces bombarded 3 major cities before Valxes could evacuate. Seora watched her home burn from a transport ship fleeing the planet. 2 million people died in the attack. Her parents were among them. The transport carried refugees to a neutral station called Haven's Rest. It was one of the few places still not controlled by any faction. The station was old and barely functional, but it was safe. Thousands of refugees crowded into spaces meant for hundreds. There was not enough food, not enough medical supplies, not enough hope. Seora helped where she could, organizing food distribution and medical care. She had been a politician, but now she was just another refugee trying to help others survive. The station's coordinator was overwhelmed. They needed someone to mediate disputes between different species groups. Tensions were high, food was scarce, violence could erupt easily. That was when Seora met Ambassador Lee Jiwoo. The human woman was working in the medical section, treating injured refugees. Seora recognized her immediately. Jiwoo had been one of the last humans to leave Council space, but here she was, back in a war zone, helping aliens who had voted to expel her people. "You are human," Seora said, stating the obvious. "Why are you here? You are violating the expulsion order." Jiwoo looked up from bandaging a Pelxian child's injured arm. Her face was tired, but her eyes were kind. "The expulsion order says humans cannot hold political positions or conduct diplomatic missions in Council space. It says nothing about humanitarian aid. These people need help. I am a doctor. I help people. That is all." "But your people were forced to leave," Seora insisted. "These species voted to expel you. Why would you risk your life to help them?" Jiwoo finished the bandage and smiled at the child, who ran back to their parent. She turned to Seora. "I did not become a doctor to help only people who like me. I became a doctor to help people who hurt. These refugees hurt. So I help. It is very simple." Over the next few days, Seora watched Jiwoo work. She watched the human doctor treat patients from species that were at war with each other. She treated Korthan soldiers and Zelthic civilians with the same careful attention. She never asked which faction they supported. She only asked where they hurt. But Jiwoo was more than a doctor. Seora saw her prevent a fight between 2 species groups arguing over food supplies. Jiwoo did not use force or commands. She listened to both sides. She asked questions. She helped them see each other's fears and needs. Within an hour, the 2 groups were working together to organize fair food distribution. It was exactly what human diplomats used to do in council chambers, but here in a refugee camp. Seora approached Jiwoo that evening. "Can we talk? I need to understand something." They sat in a quiet corner of the station. Jiwoo poured 2 cups of synthesized tea, a human custom. Seora spoke carefully. "I voted to expel humanity. I believed you had too much influence. I thought you manipulated us with emotions. I was wrong. I see that now. But I do not understand how I was so blind. How did I miss what you really were?" Jiwoo sipped her tea slowly. You were not blind. You were afraid. Fear makes everyone blind sometimes. You saw humans preventing conflicts and thought we were controlling you. You did not see that we were teaching you how to prevent conflicts yourselves. Teaching us? Sayora felt confused. But you solved our problems. You did not teach us how to solve them. Did we? Jiwoo asked gently. Think carefully. When human mediators worked on a dispute, did we just tell both sides what to do? Or did we help them learn to understand each other? Sayora thought back to disputes she had witnessed. She remembered human mediator Kim So-hyun working on a trade conflict between Valxys and the Dren Union. Kim had not proposed solutions. She had asked questions. She had helped both sides express their real concerns. She had taught them to listen to each other. By the end, Valxys and Dren had created their own solution. Kim had only guided the process. You taught us to communicate, Sayora said slowly. You taught us to see past our own perspective. You taught us empathy. Yes, Jiwoo agreed. That was always the goal. Humans could not maintain galactic peace forever. We are not immortal. Eventually, other species needed to learn these skills. We were building a foundation, training others, slowly teaching the galaxy how to understand itself. But it takes generations. 300 years was not enough time. Sayora felt tears forming. Her species did not cry often, but she cried now. We destroyed something precious because we did not understand its value. We saw a gift and called it manipulation. We saw teachers and called them controllers, and now millions die because of our pride. Jiwoo placed a gentle hand on Sayora's shoulder. Pride blinds everyone sometimes. What matters now is whether you can see clearly and choose differently. The council voted to invite humans back, Sayora said, but we have not received a response. Will humanity refuse? Do you hate us now? Jiwoo shook her head. Humans do not hate easily. We are hurt, yes. Thousands of our diplomats saw their life's work destroyed in a single vote. Our children asked why we helped people who did not want us. That pain is real. But hate? No. We understand that fear and pride make people do foolish things. We have done foolish things ourselves in our history. Then will you come back? Sayora asked desperately. Will you help us stop this collapse? That is not my decision, Jiwoo said honestly. I am just one doctor in a refugee camp. That decision belongs to our council leaders. But I can tell you this. Humans will help if we are asked properly. Not as servants who can be dismissed when convenient. Not as tools to be used and discarded. But as partners who are valued and respected. The galaxy must decide if it can accept those terms. Sayora understood. The galaxy had treated humans as servants who existed to solve their problems. They had never truly valued the centuries of work, the dedication, the sacrifice that human diplomats gave. Now humanity offered a different relationship. Partnership required respect. Respect required humility. The question was whether the council could be humble enough to accept it. The next morning, Sayora sent a message to what remained of the council. She told them about finding Jiwoo on Haven's Rest. She told them how one human doctor was doing more good than the entire council. She told them that humanity would help, but only as equals, not as servants. She urged them to send a proper delegation to human space to formally apologize and request partnership. The response came within hours. The council agreed. They would send a delegation, and they asked Sayora to lead it. 11 months after humanity's expulsion, Counselor Yoon Sayora led a delegation of 23 species to the edge of human space. The journey had been dangerous. War zones required careful navigation. Pirates attacked refugee convoys. But the delegation carried a flag of peace and a message of genuine apology. Most factions allowed them to pass, curious about what would happen next. Human space was surprisingly close to Council territory, just beyond the border. Humans had settled 5 systems in less than a year. When the delegation's ships arrived, they saw something unexpected. Human colonies were thriving. New stations orbited planets. Trade ships moved between worlds. Construction projects were everywhere. Humans had not just survived expulsion, they were flourishing. Director Park Soo-min met the delegation at the main human station called New Haven. She was Ambassador Park Min-jun's sister and now led all human diplomatic services. The delegation expected warmth from humans. They expected the famous human compassion and understanding. Instead, they found cold formality. Director Park received them in a bare conference room. No decorations, no comfortable seats. No welcoming tea, just a table and chairs. Her face showed no anger, but also no warmth. She looked at the delegates the way one might look at strangers asking for a favor they did not deserve. "Welcome to human space," Park said formally. "Please state your purpose." Sayora stood. She had prepared a speech, but looking at Park's cold expression, she abandoned it. "We came to apologize. We came to admit we were completely wrong. We came to ask for help that we do not deserve but desperately need." "Apologize for what specifically?" Park asked. Her tone was not cruel, but it demanded honesty. Sayora took a breath. "We apologized for expelling you, for claiming you manipulated us when you only helped us, for calling your compassion a weakness when it was your greatest strength, for destroying 300 years of your work because we were jealous and proud, for refusing to learn what you tried to teach us, for every human diplomat who spent their life building bridges we burned in a single day." She paused, fighting tears. "But most of all, we apologize for not valuing you until we lost you. We treated you like servants who existed to solve our problems. We never thanked you properly. We never honored the sacrifices you made. We took your help for granted and then threw you away when our pride was hurt. We are sorry, deeply, truly sorry." The other delegates stood and made their own apologies. Even Counselor Thrax, who looked physically pained to admit fault. Each species spoke of specific ways they had failed to value human contributions. The apologies lasted 2 hours. Park listened to every word without interrupting. When they finished, Park spoke. "Your apologies are noted, but apologies do not answer my question. Why are you here?" Counselor Vexitar spoke. "The galaxy is dying. 34 active wars, 2 billion refugees, economic collapse, starvation on 40 worlds. Every day thousands die. We cannot stop it. We tried. We failed. We need help." "You needed help before," Park said coldly. "That is why humans spent 3 centuries helping you. Then you decided you did not need us. What changed?" "We learned the difference between needing help and valuing help," Sayora answered. "Before, we needed you but did not value you. We saw you as tools. Now we understand you were never tools. You were partners, teachers, friends. We threw away something precious and irreplaceable." Park stood and walked to the window. Below, human workers built a new residential section. Children played in parks. Life continued normally while the galaxy burned. She spoke without turning around. "Do you know what you taught us? You taught us that our compassion was not valued. You taught us that helping others only leads to resentment. You taught us that no matter how much good we do, some will always see us as manipulators and controllers." She turned back to face them. "Thousands of human diplomats spent lifetimes building relationships. They learned your languages, studied your cultures, celebrated your successes. They cried at your tragedies. They missed their own families to help yours. And you expelled them with a vote that took 10 minutes. The pain in her voice was real and deep. Our children asked us why we helped people who did not want us. What could we say? That we were fools? That we wasted our lives on people who never appreciated us? How do you think that felt?" The room was silent. The delegates had nothing to say. Park was right. They had no defense. Park sat down again. "But humans are not cruel. We do not let billions die to teach a lesson. We will help, but not like before. Never like before. She activated a display screen. A document appeared. This is the Accord of Bridges. These are our terms. First, humans will serve as independent mediators, not council members. We will not be subject to council votes or political expulsion. Second, human mediators will have final authority in their assigned disputes. You must trust us to do our work without interference. Third, you will fund human diplomatic operations appropriately. Our diplomats will be paid fairly for their expertise and work. More terms appeared. Fourth, you will establish the Memorial of Bridges. Every human diplomat who served the council will be honored. Their names, their work, their sacrifices will be remembered. Fifth, every species will teach their children about the year without bridges. They will learn what happens when compassion is rejected and pride rules decisions. Park looked at each delegate. These terms are not negotiable. We will help you rebuild. We will teach you again how to understand each other. We will show you how to build lasting peace. But we will do it as valued partners, not as servants you can discard when convenient. Accept these terms or reject them. Choose now. The delegates conferred briefly. There was no real choice. They needed humanity desperately. And honestly, the terms were fair. More than fair, they were merciful. Sayora stood. We accept every term. Thank you for giving us another chance we do not deserve. Park's expression softened slightly. We give you this chance because that is who humans are. We cannot watch suffering without trying to help. But remember this day. Remember how close you came to permanent collapse. Remember why you needed us. And never take compassion for granted again. 5 years passed. The wars ended slowly, one peace treaty at a time. Human mediator Choi Dae-hyun personally negotiated the Korthan-Zelthic peace, finding common ground both sides could accept. Human diplomats fanned out across the galaxy, rebuilding broken alliances and teaching species how to communicate again. It took years, but peace returned. Trade recovered. Refugees went home. The Memorial of Bridges was built at the council chamber's entrance. Every visitor saw the names of thousands of human diplomats carved in stone. Above the names, a simple inscription. They built bridges between stars. They united the divided. They taught us that peace requires not just logic, but also love. Every species now taught their children about the year without bridges. They learned how the galaxy nearly destroyed itself when it rejected compassion. They learned that some gifts are only recognized in their absence. They learned to value the bridges before they fell. Ambassador Park Min-joon stood at the memorial on its dedication day. His sister stood beside him. He looked at the names of friends and colleagues who had served and been forgotten until after they left. "Do you think they will remember this lesson?" he asked quietly. Park Soo-min smiled. "For a generation or two, yes. Then someone will forget. Someone will become jealous again. Someone will question whether we should have so much influence. It is the nature of civilizations to forget hard lessons." "Then why do we keep helping?" Min-joon asked. She looked at him with the patient expression she had learned from a lifetime of diplomacy. "Because that is who we are. We build bridges knowing they might fall. We teach lessons knowing they might be forgotten. We offer compassion knowing it might be rejected. We do these things not because we expect eternal gratitude, but because building bridges is better than watching the galaxy burn." Min-joon nodded. She was right. Humanity had returned not because the galaxy deserved it, but because leaving people to suffer went against everything humans believed. They would build the bridges again. They would teach the lessons again. And if someday the galaxy forgot and tried to expel them again, humans would still be humans. They would still choose compassion over resentment. They would still build bridges between stars, because that was humanity's true strength. Not that they could unite the galaxy, but that they never stopped trying.